Arsenal keep their European hopes alive, and so it's all to play for heading into the final day of the season. We're going to be discussing Arsenal's win at Crystal Palace right here on the Chronicles of a Gooner.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hello and welcome back to another live edition of the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast brought to you by 90 Min. As ever, I'm your host, Harry Symeou, and on this edition, we're going to be reacting around about 20 minutes after the full-time whistle to Arsenal's 3-1 victory at Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park. It didn't look like it was going to come, if I'm honest. Arsenal obviously took the lead through Nicolas Pepe, really well-worked goal down the left-hand side. But to be honest, in the second half, we were dire. Crystal Palace were by far the better side. Crystal Palace played with an intensity, with an aggression, and with a desire that you just weren't seeing from the Arsenal players. But in the end, a bit of quality shone through. It was a wonderful ball into the back post area from Martin Odegaard to set up Gabriel Martinelli to make it 2-1. And then Nicolas Pepe stepped up for the second time on the evening to finish the job for the Gunners. I'm pleased. You know, I am pleased, and I'd spent kind of the day and the build up to this game sort of convincing myself of its insignificance, convincing myself of the fact that I don't really want Arsenal to get into the Europa Conference. I'd rather be without European football. And, you know, there's a chance that we'll get into the Europa Conference and all of that, but there's a chance we could make the UEFA Cup as well. I keep calling it UEFA Cup because I'm old school, but the Europa League, you know what I mean? And, I've got to be honest, I didn't really actually start to feel like I desperately wanted Arsenal or needed Arsenal to win tonight until Tottenham played. And until I watched Tottenham and I saw that scoreline and I went, I'll tell you what, you know, Tottenham are terrible here. And we could close the gap on them to just a solitary point if we could do our job. And after a really positive first half, I thought, and we'll come on to discuss the ins and outs of the game in a moment, to see us pegged back the way we were and struggling to then get a foothold on the game, you know, it was frustrating. It was disappointing. And then you start to talk yourself out of being bothered about it, out of kind of, you know, letting it get to you, only for Arsenal to go and do what they did. And look, a lot of the time this season, we've talked about Mikel Arteta. We've slagged him off. We've talked about bad changes, bad substitutions, bad in-game management. He switched it to a back three. He brought Gabriel Martinelli on. He brought Martin Odegaard on. The pair combined for what would have been the decisive goal. He chose to take off Saka rather than Pepe. Pepe stepped up and delivered. And I just want to touch on Nicolas Pepe before we go into some of the incidents in the game, because Nicolas Pepe, for me, this might sound like a really stupid comparison to some, but Nicolas Pepe reminds me a little bit of Theo Walcott, and I'll explain why. They're very different players, right? Theo Walcott, right-footed, a bit of a pace merchant. Nicolas Pepe's definitely got a little bit more about him in terms of technical ability, I would say. But he does have moments that are incredibly frustrating. He does have moments where you're looking at him and you're going, how the hell did we spend £72 million on this player? And you've got to get to the point where you're kind of not thinking about the £72 million. He's not a £72 million player. We know that. Put that out of your mind. But he is a decent player. And he's a player who has scored 14 goals this season. 14. It's a pretty decent return from someone who's been so in and out of the side. For someone who is a wide man, it's a really, really good return. And the reason I make that comparison with Theo Walcott is because no matter how frustrating you find them, no matter how frustrating they can be, they both carry a goal threat. Theo Walcott used to carry a goal threat even when he looked absolute pants. And it's the same with Nicolas Pepe. You know, you can watch him give the ball away in the build-up 4 or 5 times consecutively. But he's the type of player that's got a goal in him. In the lead up to the first goal, I thought he was playing actually quite poorly. He gave the ball away. He was trying to, pick people out with these extravagant flicks and tricks. And he was trying a little bit too hard, in my opinion. And then a lovely bit of work down the left-hand side between Saka and Tierney. In comes the cross, and who's on the end of it? Lo and behold, Nicolas Pepe, because he's got that goal-scoring instinct. He finished the first one brilliantly. But kind of touching on the first half, I was getting really frustrated. And I was, effing and blinding at the TV, I got to be honest. Some of the decisions taken by the referee and his VAR tonight were just appalling. And there's no getting away from that. I mean, the challenge from Jeffrey Schlupp on Callum Chambers was a vile challenge. I am gobsmacked that the VAR has looked at that and decided that it is not a red card. Absolutely gobsmacked. It's a disgusting challenge. Okay, you've got those people, and Peter Walton on BT Sport was one of them, who says it's an orange card. Well, Peter, guess what? There is no orange card in football. So stop sitting on the fence and make your mind up. Is it a yellow? Is it a red? I thought it was a straight red card, no doubt about it. But I'd have had a lot of more respect for the former referee, for Peter Walton on BT Sport, if he said it was a yellow and at least made a decision one way or the other, rather than making up the orange card, pulling the orange card out of his back pocket to get away and avoid making an actual call. Ridiculous. Poor punditry. Give an opinion. You're an ex-referee. Give an opinion. Either it's a sending off, Peter, or it's not. No such thing as an orange card. Absolute nonsense. And then there was the other incident involving Mohamed El Neni and Christian Benteke. And Christian Benteke deliberately throws an arm into the direction of Mohamed El Neni's face. Doesn't really connect, and he's lucky it doesn't really connect. Both of them are lucky it didn't really connect. But the intent is there. He's lashed out. Why on earth has Christian Benteke been allowed to stay on the pitch after that? That was what VAR was brought in for, to spot incidents like that perhaps went under the radar. Yet the officials on this occasion have chosen to completely ignore it, to completely overlook it. And then there was, of course, that kick out from Ward. Look, the one from Ward, I would have been okay with him showing him a yellow card there, right? I would have been happy with him showing him a yellow card there. I do think that Ward was probably trying to kick the ball away. There wasn't an excessive force in that. And it annoyed me at the time, and it pissed me off, and it wound me up. But when I saw it back again, a yellow card would have sufficed there. But that's 3 decisions, 3 major decisions. At least 2 of those Crystal Palace players should have seen red. And one of them, Christian Benteke, was the man who pegged us back. It was awful defending from Arsenal on that set piece. It was such a typical Arsenal goal to concede. Not strong enough in terms of jostling for position. Mohamed El Neni hits the deck, in my opinion, quite easily. Has got to do more. But Gabriel, the centre-half, has got to take control of the situation. He ends up on the deck as well because he's not set right. He hasn't set his body right. He loses his footing, he loses his balance, and he hits the deck. Really disappointing goal to concede. And, look, whatever way you look at it, if your opponent's centre forward is completely free in the middle of your penalty area and has a chance to head home from that kind of distance, you've got it horribly wrong from a defensive standpoint. It's not like he's risen above a defender with a towering header. Come on. Let's talk about the sort of overall performance before we come on to talk about the goals that obviously handed Arsenal all 3 points tonight and what that means for Arsenal going into the final game of the season. The drop-off in performance between the first half and the second half. There I go again for the second time today on a live stream, sneezing. My apologies. But the difference between Arsenal in the first half, and the second half was significant. Arsenal were in complete control of the game in the first period, control possession, moved the ball at a nice tempo, a nice rhythm. And actually, Crystal Palace, to be fair to them, really picked up their game in the second half. You know, we've talked a lot over the last 24 hours and probably since the FA Cup final now about, you know, how much of an impact fans in the stadium are having. And I think at Selhurst Park in particular, where there is a very partisan, very loud, very intimidating home crowd and very encouraging home crowd. I think that, you know, you saw that in the second half, Crystal Palace attacking their favoured end. The fans got behind them, and you saw the intensity of Crystal Palace's game just rise. And they were first to every ball, and they were doing things with more energy, and there was more purpose about them when they were in possession in comparison to Arsenal, who just kind of went into their shell a little bit after conceding that goal. In truth, it wasn't great from the very kickoff of the second half, but we did kind of go into our shell a little bit, and you know, it was clear to see, and you did wonder at that point if we were ever gonna create another chance in the game, you know, ever give ourselves a chance of getting all 3 points, because we did really drop off. And then you see that little bit of quality. You know, there was a good chance for Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, wasn't there, where a ball came in from Callum Chambers, who put in a really good delivery, to be fair to him, did well to get up and down on that right hand side. And then you know, Aubameyang with a real chance, he failed to put it in the back of the net, failed to hit the target, really disappointingly. And you thought that was the chance. You really did. You thought that was the chance, and that was it, and it was done and dusted. But to be fair to Arsenal, they kept patient. A change from Mikel Arteta, as I've already alluded to, made the difference, switched the formation up a little bit, brought Gabriel Martinelli and Martin Odegaard a little bit earlier into the mix. And those two combined for what looked like it was going to be the winning goal. And Martin Odegaard's ball in towards that far post was incredible. It was, if you remember back to Ozil playing that pass to Nacho Monreal at the far post where nobody else could see it at the time. You know, you see Odegaard receive the ball there, and the first thing you think is, yeah, stand it up at the far post or try and bend it into the corner or whatever it is you're going to do. But instead, he spots Gabriel Martinelli and he puts the perfect weight of it, perfect weight on the pass, and he finds Gabriel Martinelli, who takes a touch, and there was a suspicion of handball there, and the VAR was looking at it, etc., etc. But then he rounds the goalkeeper with it and puts it in the back of the net. And from then on, you're thinking, yes, this has been a smash and grab. We've nicked this, and I'm absolutely delighted. And then Nicolas Pepe pops up with another moment of brilliance, just to seal the deal, just to make sure that Arsenal got all 3 points and made a real statement. And we've been really disillusioned as a fan base of late, and we've been really disappointed. And we've talked a lot about the fact that there's been very little improvement overall this season. But even Mikel Arteta's biggest critics cannot deny that since Christmas, there has been a significant improvement in our league form. Only Manchester United and Manchester City since Christmas have taken more points in the Premier League than Arsenal. We won our 4th game on the bounce in the league under Mikel Arteta for the first time in his tenure. And you know, we go into the final day of the season with something to play for. Tottenham, of course, beaten at home by Aston Villa by 2-1. They were dreadful. They were absolutely dreadful this evening. I saw the first half or most of the first half, and then I flicked over to it for the last few minutes because it was during the half time of Arsenal's game. So that was interesting, you know, to see sort of how poor they were, and you know, really it gave me encouragement and actually kind of wound me up about the end of the season and about the significance of it and the fact that, yeah, we might end up in the Europa Conference, and I'm not sure that I want that, but we could potentially finish above Spurs, and that is something for Arsenal to take encouragement from. It's something for Arsenal to go into sort of the final day of the season, sort of, and give us a bit of a purpose, you know, going into that final day with something to play for. And we could potentially end the season on, I'm not going to call it a high because, you know, it's still going to be an underwhelming season, but we have the potential now to end the season on a more positive note, and it will encourage people get going into the summer to get behind the team when things when the new season kicks off and when we're back in the stadium. Sam says we finally won at Old Trafford, Stamford Bridge, and Selhurst Park, Harry. Absolutely. And you know what? When we were at 1-1 and it was getting to the latter stages of the game, I started drafting a tweet where I was going to point out that Arsenal, had we failed to win tonight, wouldn't have beaten Crystal Palace in any of the last 6 Premier League meetings between the two. And that's quite poor. That's quite disappointing. But that was going to be the reality until, of course, Gabriel Martinelli stepped up with only his second goal of the season. And, there's been major calls for Gabriel Martinelli to play. And there's been a lot of criticism directed towards Mikel Arteta for the fact that, he's not really had the game time and et cetera, et cetera. And I said on the Same Old Arsenal podcast, and I think I said it on the preview show earlier on Wednesday, that as good as I think Martinelli will be and as good as he's shown signs of becoming, he had to contribute more in the opportunities that he was getting. Going into tonight, he'd had 21 appearances and managed just the 1 goal. So he needed to do more in terms of outputs. He needed to do more on that front, and unfortunately it hadn't happened up until now, but he has stepped up today and he's delivered. And if he can do that a few more times, Gabriel Martinelli, make the difference, make that contribution that means so much, then he'll give Mikel Arteta no choice but to put him in the team, just like Nicolas Pepe's done of late. Nicolas Pepe was well out of favour earlier in the season. He was publicly called out by Mikel Arteta, publicly lambasted after he was sent off at Leeds United. And all of a sudden, Nicolas Pepe is the flavour of the month and he's digging Arsenal out of holes left, right and centre. So it can change. And Gabriel Martinelli has to continue to deliver in the way he did tonight. Make those contributions when you do get those opportunities. Take them with both hands and you will get your reward. And I have no doubt in my mind that Gabriel Martinelli will be a really important player for Arsenal going into next season. So we've talked a little bit about the game. We talked about the decisions. We've talked about Mikel Arteta, some of the changes he made, etc., etc. We'll come on to some of your questions in the chat box in just a few moments' time. Firstly, I want to remind you guys that this show is brought to you by manscaped.com. So if you're in need of some male grooming products, if you want to get that nether region sorted out ahead of the lifting of all the lockdown restrictions here in the UK, then head over to manscaped.com, enter our discount code, which is 90min20, and you will receive 20% off of your order as well as free shipping. There was a comment on one of the streams earlier today from somebody who said that the discount code wasn't working. I actually logged on to Manscaped myself to check that because I wanted to make sure before I went back to them, and it worked for me. So I'm not sure what went wrong there, but it does work. I can assure you that the code is valid. Just a quick reminder as well, make sure you hit the like button, guys. We've only got 46 likes on the video, despite there being over 260 of you watching us live on YouTube at the moment. So if you haven't done so already, please do hit the like button. It really, really does help. And subscribe to the channel if you're new. Equally, if you want to become a member and get access to our members only content, the latest piece of which dropped yesterday, you can do so by clicking on the link in the description. We would love to have you and love to have you as part of our Discord server. Right, let's have a look then at what that means for Arsenal, what that means for the bigger picture going into Sunday's last round of fixtures. I'm going to bring up the live league table according to PremierLeague.com. There's nowhere more reliable than the league's own website. So get your questions in the chat box while I'm doing this, right? And try, if you can, just put a Q at the beginning so that I can pick them out as questions. It just makes my life that bit easier. Let's have a little zoom in here on how things stand. And of course, this is the live league table now. At the time of recording, Tottenham Hotspur have already been beaten by Aston Villa. Burnley are currently trailing Liverpool by 2-0. And West Ham, as it stands with 25 minutes to go, but bearing in mind this is a live podcast and that could change, are currently being held to a 1-1 draw by West Bromwich Albion. Thomas Souček scored. Well, initially it was awarded as a Thomas Souček own goal at West Brom's opener. I think it's been given to Mateus Pereira now, but Souček went down the other end anyway and equalised right on the stroke of half-time for David Moyes' side. So where does that leave us tonight? It leaves Arsenal in 9th position. Arsenal are in 9th place with 58 points on the board. You see that Everton are just ahead of us on 59, but we have a much superior goal difference to Everton. Tottenham are on 59. West Ham, as it stands, will be on 60. Leicester on 66. We're not going to catch up to Leicester, but anywhere between, even Leeds United could sneak into the. Well, they're not going to because they need a massive goal swing, but from Arsenal up to West Ham United, it is all up for grabs. Of course, 6th place will play in next season's UEFA Europa League. 7th place will hand you a place in the Europa Conference, which is a new competition. It's the new 3rd-tier competition of European football. So because Manchester City won the Carabao Cup, the 7th place team will be awarded that. That could be us. It could be Tottenham. It could be Everton. It could be West Ham. There is plenty to play for on the final day of the season. So I'm sure there's going to be plenty of sort of chopping and changing in regards to the table come Sunday. I can see a couple of you asking in the chat if there's going to be a watch along on Sunday. Unfortunately, I am on commentary duties. It's my last commentary of the season for VSIN over in the United States, and I will be live in the studio trying to commentate on the game between Leicester and Tottenham. That's the one I've been given, which obviously has implications for us, but I'll be keeping across the other games and keeping our listeners across the other games at the same time. So that's what I'll be doing on Sunday, but I will come on in the evening and we can talk about it. And then throughout the course of next week, we'll be reviewing Arsenal's Premier League campaign, Arsenal's campaign overall, through different viewpoints, through different lenses. I'll be getting some guests on to help me do that. So lots and lots of content coming as we try to take stock of where Arsenal end up. So that's how it stands at the moment. Arsenal in 9th on 58 points. West Ham, as it stands, are on 60 in 6th. So they are reachable. But of course, bear in mind that if you're listening to this on the audio or if you're watching this back later, that could change because their game with West Bromwich Albion is currently ongoing. Let's have a look at the final day's fixtures because obviously, of course, that too has significance. Are we looking at the teams above us and hoping they will drop points, or is there a real possibility that they could, depending on who their opponents are? So if we have a look at the final games of the Premier League season, Arsenal, of course, are at home to Brighton and Hove Albion. Leeds United take on West Brom at home. Everton travel to Manchester City, but of course, Manchester City will no doubt have one eye on the UEFA Champions League final, which is coming next Saturday. Leicester take on Spurs. That's a big one at the King Power Stadium. And of course, West Ham United are at home to Southampton. So those are the fixtures, the key ones for us. Arsenal versus Brighton, Leeds versus West Brom, Leicester versus Spurs, Manchester City versus Everton, and West Ham United versus Southampton. So all to play for on the final day of the Premier League season. It's quite nice, isn't it? Having something to look forward to, having something to kind of cling on to going into the final day. It might end up in disappointment, but to be honest, I don't think there can be as big a disappointment this season as some of the ones we've already experienced. So yeah, I'm not overly worried about it. If it happens and we do it, great. If we don't, okay. If we manage to finish above Spurs, even better. But we'll see how it goes on that final day of this season. Right, let's pick up some of your questions from the live comments. Big hello to Kim, who says, who is the most frail and meek player at Arsenal and why is it Oba? Well, you're asking me, but you've answered the question yourself there, Kim. Look, I think Aubameyang was out of sorts tonight. I think he has been out of sorts for large parts of this season. Still managed 15 goals, mind you, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, which is by no means a disaster, but he's not been at his brilliant best. I wonder how much that malaria has taken out of him, because it is an illness that notoriously takes it out of you, and you need a bit of time to recover fully from it. So I wonder if that's having an impact. I wonder if he's still feeling the effects from that. But yeah, he wasn't up to standard tonight. Hasn't been for quite a while. But it is what it is. Talal says, don't you think we might benefit by not having European football next season? Yeah, I do. I said it on the preview show earlier today. I talked about the fact that having a week between games, having more time on the training ground, and being able, as a result of not having European football, to trim that squad down even further, so we can kind of accelerate the rebuild and do it in a way whereby, we're only bringing in players fit for purpose, rather than having to worry about the idea of playing in more competitions, etc., etc. There are undoubtedly Talal benefits to Arsenal not being in Europe, but if we can sneak into the UEFA Europa League, that would be fantastic. And look, if we finish above Spurs in the process, I'd also be delighted with that as well, given it's our bloody worst ever season in the Premier League. Let's see what else we've got here. ADT says, would you rather Arsenal go to the Europa Conference or no Europe at all? Honestly, probably no Europe at all. But equally, I still want Arsenal to go for it on the final day of the season, because there is a possibility of making the top 6. And if you can do that, then that is great. You've got to try. You've got to go for it. You've got to do your best to get back into the Europa League. If you fail and you end up in the Europa Conference, it's not ideal, but it is what it is. That's the way I look at it. What else have we got here? Xander says, do you think qualifying for Europe would change the transfer window and we will look to move on less players because we would need a larger squad? It kind of ties in with what I was saying just a moment ago, Xander, and I think it could be, it could be the case. It could be the case where he looks at that team and the squad and he goes, I can't really afford to leave myself so thin. Having said that, that's not the only issue. You're also talking about the finances that we might be able to spend potentially changing, and that could potentially be different because, of course, that European revenue does help and does go some way in making up the transfer budget. So I guess we'll have to see. But I do think that not being in Europe completely, or not being in Europe at all, I should say, does mean that you can trim the squad that further bit down, and you can kind of get away with it. Michael S says, if we end up 6th, is this a well done Arteta, or is he still dependent on the first few games in the new season? I think you can give him praise for managing to lift the group after the Villarreal exit, and then achieving a top 6 finish, given the position we were in and the fact that it looked impossible, if, of course, we go on to do it. I think you can give him praise for that without still being totally convinced of his credentials moving forward. It's one of those things where you're kind of kicking the can down the road. And if Mikel Arteta does get us into the top 6, that would be fantastic. But if he doesn't, then of course that's still a disappointing season. And you have to, well, I'm going around the houses. Basically, if he does get us into the top 6, I will say well done. He'll deserve a well done for managing to turn our fortunes around at the back end of the season when all hope seemed lost and everybody was really downbeat. But equally, it doesn't erase everything that's gone on before, I guess is the point I wanted to make there. Matt says, Harry, if Willian leaves in the summer, do you think Arteta will sign another winger so he has a reason not to start Martinelli? That's a fantastic question, a very smart question. But no, I do think that Gabriel Martinelli is part of Mikel Arteta's plans. I think he always has been. I think he's just, honestly, I'm not sure that he had, especially when he first came back, done enough to warrant being in the side. We were kind of calling for it based on what we'd seen previously, but the reality was when he was getting, and admittedly there were limited opportunities, he wasn't really at the level required. He wasn't contributing goals, as I highlighted a little bit earlier on this show. And so now we'll see. We'll see. Don Giovanni says, have you seen Freddie's comment on Pepe? Seems like calling out Arteta. This is what I saw every day in training. If you put him in these positions, he can be lethal. I'm not sure. Look, Freddie's job is to be a pundit, right? Freddie's job is to give his opinion. He's very fortunate to have been in a position where he's worked for the club and he's worked with this group and this manager very, very closely in the recent sort of times, and he's got a little bit of insight, and he's going to put that insight across. It's why BT Sport have hired him, because, you know, I love Freddie Ljungberg, but he's not the greatest pundit, in my opinion, in terms of persona and character. Like, I feel like, and I've interviewed Freddie as well, and he was like that. Found him a little bit like, I don't know if it's his tone of voice, but he's not very entertaining. So the reason he is there is because of that knowledge and insight that he has of that group. And so he's going to share comments like that. I don't think we should take them all as a dig towards Mikel Arteta. I think Nicolas Pepe, we all know, has that in his locker. But he has been a little bit frustrating and a little bit out of sorts at various points in his Arsenal career. There's no doubt in that. But he's had a run of games. He's been playing a lot more regularly lately, and you're seeing the benefits of that now. So let's see how it goes. Right. We are going to leave it there. We'll be back tomorrow, of course, with some more analysis on the game. We'll be reacting in a little bit more detail to Mikel Arteta's post-match press conference. We'll be basically dealing with the fallout from this one. And of course, we will begin our build-up towards what could be a significant weekend for Arsenal Football Club. It didn't look like that was going to be the case at one point, but Arsenal still very much in the hunt for UEFA Europa League football. And of course, there's always that prospect of finishing above Tottenham and bringing St. Totteringham's Day back to life. That would be nice, wouldn't it? I can see on the stream there's only 93 likes. There's almost 300 of you watching us on YouTube. So let's get it up to 125 by the time the outro plays. It'll be much appreciated. Don't forget to check out Manscaped. Don't forget to check out our membership scheme and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I'll catch you all tomorrow with some more Arsenal related content. Until then, take care. Bye for now.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.